The loudest person in the room is rarely the most respected. And science finally proved why. Right now, millions of professionals are making the same mistake. They believe that to be taken seriously, they need to talk more, project more, perform more. They watch charismatic leaders on stage and think, I need to be louder. I need to be funnier. I need to dominate the room. And every day, they get ignored, interrupted, overlooked. Meanwhile, someone quieter walks into the same room. They speak less. They move slower. They don't fight for attention. And somehow, everyone listens when they talk. This isn't luck. This isn't personality. This is a learnable system. And in the next 13 minutes, you're going to understand exactly how it works. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth that changes everything. For decades, psychologists assumed charisma was a personality trait. You either had it or you didn't. Extroverts won. Introverts lost. End of story. Then Princeton psychologists Susan Fiske and Amy Cuddy published research in 2007 that changed everything. Their paper in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, cited over 4,000 times since, identified the exact two dimensions humans use to evaluate each other within seconds. Researchers led by Dr. Susan Fiske discovered that humans evaluate each other on exactly two dimensions. Not 10, not 50, two. The first dimension is warmth. Can I trust this person? Are they on my side? The second dimension is competence. Can this person deliver? Do they have power? Here's the breakthrough. Charisma isn't a third trait. Charisma is what happens when someone signals both warmth and competence at the same time. That's it. That's the entire formula. And here's what makes this revolutionary for quiet people. Warmth and competence are not about volume. They're about signals, microbehaviors, cues that your brain and body broadcast every second, whether you're talking or silent. This is the insight that changes the game. Loud people often destroy their own charisma. They signal warmth by being friendly and talkative, but they undermine competence by appearing desperate for approval. The signals cancel each other out. I once watched a CEO walk into a room of 200 executives. He didn't wave. He didn't smile broadly. He didn't work the crowd or shake hands aggressively. He simply walked to his seat at a measured pace, sat down, and waited. The room fell silent within seconds. No announcement. No dramatic entrance. Just presence. Later, I asked one of the executives what made this CEO so commanding. She thought for a moment and said, "He doesn't need anything from us. You can feel it." Most leaders walk in wanting approval, wanting validation, wanting to be seen as impressive. He just walks in. That's the 7-second status scan in action. Before he said a single word, every person in that room had already decided, this is someone to take seriously. His secret wasn't charisma in the theatrical sense. It was the absence of need. His posture was settled, not performed. His eye contact was steady, not searching. His pace was his own, not reactive to the energy around him. He had mastered the 4 signals without making them look like signals at all. Quiet people have the opposite advantage. When you speak less, you automatically signal higher competence. Scarcity creates value. The challenge is adding warmth signals without losing that edge. This audiobook teaches you exactly how to do that. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was a senior product manager at a Fortune 500 tech company. Brilliant, capable, consistently rated as a top performer in her reviews, and consistently passed over for promotion. In meetings, she noticed a pattern. She would make a point. Silence. Then a male colleague would restate the same point moments later, and suddenly everyone would engage. Great idea, Mark. Meanwhile, Sarah sat there wondering if she had spoken at all. She tried the obvious solutions. She spoke louder. She spoke more often. She adopted power poses in the bathroom before presentations. She read books about executive presence and practiced projecting confidence. Nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. The more she tried to perform confidence, the more exhausted she became. The more she forced herself to be louder, the less authentic she felt. Then she learned something that shifted everything. The problem wasn't her volume. The problem was her signals. She was broadcasting competence through her words, but undermining it through a dozen unconscious cues. The upward inflection that turned statements into questions, The nervous laughter after making a point, the constant nodding while others spoke, the apologetic preamble before every contribution. She didn't need to become someone else. She needed to stop accidentally sabotaging herself. Within 6 months of cleaning up her signals, Sarah received her promotion. Not because she became louder, because she became clearer. The value she had always possessed finally became visible. This is what quiet charisma looks like in practice. It's not transformation into someone you're not. It's removal of the static that's been hiding who you already are. Now, let's address something directly. You might be thinking, this sounds like manipulation. I don't want to trick people into respecting me. Good, because that's not what this is. Manipulation means getting people to do something against their interests. What you're learning here is the opposite. You're removing the static. You're cleaning up the signals. You're letting your actual competence and warmth come through clearly. Instead of being buried under nervous habits, hedging language, and unconscious low-status cues. Think about it this way. Imagine two equally skilled professionals. Same knowledge, same experience, same value. One of them broadcasts that value cleanly. The other buries it under filler words, anxious body language, and over-explanation. Who gets the promotion? Who gets heard in the meeting? Who earns respect? The difference isn't value. The difference is signal clarity. No manipulation. No fake confidence. Just removing the noise so your real signal gets through. Here's where most advice fails. Pick up any book about confidence or charisma. You'll find the same tips recycled endlessly. Make eye contact. Stand up straight. Speak with conviction. These tips aren't wrong. They're just incomplete. They tell you what to do, but not how to actually do it. They assume you can flip a switch and suddenly become more commanding. That's not how behavior change works. What works is systems, protocols, step-by-step processes that you can practice, repeat, and internalize until they become automatic. That's what separates this audiobook from everything else you've tried. You're not getting inspiration. You're getting installation. By the time you finish listening, you'll have 5 complete frameworks in your toolkit. The 7-second status scan. Exactly what high-respect professionals broadcast in the first moments of any interaction. The nervous energy off protocol, a 60-second reset that shuts down anxiety before it leaks through your body. The boundary language ladder, 3 levels of phrases that make people take your limits seriously. The 3-layer conversation system, how to move any interaction from shallow to meaningful without being weird. And 1-sentence authority, short, clean sentence structures that carry weight. Here's something Harvard Business Review confirmed in 2019. First impressions are set in 7 seconds. But, and this is critical, first impressions are not final impressions. They can be overwritten. The frameworks you're learning don't just help you nail the first 7 seconds. They help you recover when you don't. They give you correction tools, not just prevention tools. This matters because perfection isn't the goal. Consistency is. Let's look at how this plays out in reality. Elite versus average comparison number 1. Average professionals talk to prove their value. When they feel overlooked, they talk more. They over-explain. They add qualifiers. I just think that maybe we could possibly consider. They're working harder and getting less respect. High-respect professionals signal to broadcast their value. They speak less frequently, but with more precision. They use silence strategically. They let their presence do work that words cannot. The difference isn't personality. It's strategy. Elite versus average comparison number 2. Average professionals perform charisma. They watch how confident people act and try to copy the surface behaviors. They force eye contact until it feels aggressive. They project their voice until it feels unnatural. They're wearing a costume that doesn't fit. High-respect professionals broadcast charisma. They're not performing. They're signaling. The cues come from internal state, not external imitation. When you actually feel grounded, you don't need to act grounded. When you actually respect your own boundaries, you don't need to pretend. That's why this audiobook spends as much time on internal protocols, like the nervous energy off reset, as it does on external techniques. The external stuff only works when the internal foundation is solid. Let's make this concrete. Think about the last time you felt overlooked in a meeting. Someone interrupted you, or talked over you, or restated your idea as if it were theirs. What did you do? If you're like most people, you did one of three things. Option 1. You stayed quiet and felt resentful. Option 2. You pushed back aggressively and felt awkward afterward. Option 3. You over-explained your point, hoping volume would compensate for being dismissed. None of these work. Here's why. Staying quiet reinforces low status. Pushing back aggressively damages warmth. Over-explaining signals desperation. The high-respect response looks completely different. It's calm. It's brief. It's a single sentence delivered with grounded energy. You'll learn exactly what that sentence sounds like in Chapter 6. But the sentence alone isn't enough. The sentence only lands if your body isn't leaking nervous energy. Your body only stays calm if you know how to reset it before the meeting. And the reset only works if you understand why your nervous system fires in the first place. That's why this audiobook is structured the way it is. Each chapter builds on the last. By the end, you won't just know what to say. You'll have the internal state to make it land. Here's the truth nobody tells you about respect. You don't earn it by trying harder. You earn it by signaling correctly. The quiet professional who broadcasts clean warmth and competence signals will always outperform the loud professional who broadcasts noise. This is not theory. This is Princeton research. This is Harvard data. This is what Fortune 500 executive coaches teach behind closed doors. And now it's yours. So here's where we stand. Charisma is not personality. It's signal. Respect is not earned by volume. It's earned by clarity. And quiet people have a structural advantage if they learn to use it. No manipulation. No fake confidence. Just learnable cues that your brain and body can broadcast consistently. That's what this audiobook delivers. Here's a line worth remembering. Charisma isn't about being heard. It's about being felt. But here's the thing. Everything starts in the first 7 seconds. Before you speak your first word, people have already decided whether to take you seriously. They've scanned your posture. They've read your eye contact. They've measured your pace. They've tested your comfort with silence. Most professionals fail this scan without knowing it. They broadcast low-status signals automatically, then spend the rest of the conversation trying to recover. In the next chapter, you're going to learn exactly what happens in those 7 seconds and how to pass the scan every time. The signals are specific. They're measurable. And once you see them, you'll never unsee them. Chapter 2 starts now. Chapter 2. The first 7 seconds. High-status signals. Harvard researchers discovered something uncomfortable. People decide if they respect you before you finish your first sentence. 7 seconds. That's all you get. In the time it takes to walk into a room and say hello, the people watching have already answered 3 questions about you. Can I trust this person? Are they competent? Should I take them seriously? These judgments happen below conscious awareness. The people making them don't know they're making them. And here's what makes this dangerous. These snap judgments are sticky. Once someone categorizes you as low status, every interaction that follows is filtered through that lens. But here's the opportunity. The signals that determine those 7 seconds are specific. They're predictable, and they're completely controllable once you know what they are. Most people think first impressions are about what you say. They rehearse their introduction. They craft the perfect opening line. They worry about their word choice. This is a mistake. Dr. Albert Mehrabian's 1967 research at UCLA, later refined in his book Silent Messages, established what communication scholars now call the 7-38-55 rule. In initial interactions, words account for only 7% of how people evaluate you. 38% comes from vocal tone, and 55%, the majority, comes from body language. Read that again. More than half of your first impression is determined before you speak a single word. This is why charismatic people seem to have an unfair advantage. It's not that they say better things. It's that their bodies are broadcasting high-status signals while yours might be broadcasting low-status ones. They're winning the first 7 seconds. You might be losing them without knowing. Stanford University's Graduate School of Business studied this phenomenon in MBA students. They found that students who displayed specific nonverbal cues in mock interviews were rated as significantly more hireable, even when their verbal answers were identical to lower-rated candidates. The cues were not complex. They were not dramatic. They were 4 simple signals that anyone can learn. Here's the framework. I call it the 7-second status scan. For signals, for letters, PPS, posture, eye contact, pace, silence. Master these 4, and you pass the scan every time. Fail on even one, and you're fighting uphill for the rest of the interaction. Let's break down each one. Signal 1, posture. This is the most visible and the most commonly failed. When researchers at Columbia and Harvard studied body language and status perception, they identified 2 posture categories. Expansive postures, taking up space, shoulders back, chest open, were universally associated with power and confidence. Contractive postures, shoulders rolled forward, arms crossed, body compressed, were universally associated with low status and insecurity. The fascinating part, these associations were consistent across cultures. Whether in New York, Tokyo, or Sao Paulo, humans read posture the same way. It's hardwired. Now here's what most advice gets wrong. They tell you to stand tall or have good posture. This is useless. It's too vague to implement. Here's the specific protocol. Before any important interaction, do a 3-point check. First, roll your shoulders back once, then let them drop naturally. Don't hold them up. That creates tension. Let them settle into a relaxed, open position. Second, imagine a string pulling the crown of your head toward the ceiling. This lengthens your spine without creating stiffness. Third, plant your feet shoulder-width apart, weight distributed evenly. No shifting, no leaning. This takes 4 seconds, and it changes how every person in the room perceives you. Signal 2, eye contact. This is the most misunderstood signal of the 4. Most people have heard that eye contact is important, so they try to make more of it. They stare. They lock on. They refuse to look away. This is wrong. Aggressive eye contact doesn't signal confidence. It signals threat. It makes people uncomfortable and activates their defensive responses. The research shows something more nuanced. Status is communicated not by how much eye contact you make, but by the ratio of eye contact while speaking versus listening. Here's the pattern. Low-status individuals make more eye contact while listening and less while speaking. They're watching for approval. They're checking if they're being received well. They're seeking permission. High-status individuals do the opposite. They make strong eye contact while speaking because they're delivering a message that matters. They relax eye contact while listening because they're secure enough to absorb information without performing attention. This ratio has a name, the visual dominance ratio. Research by Dr. David Givens found that high-status individuals have a ratio close to 1-to-1 or higher, equal or more eye contact while speaking than listening. Low-status individuals often show ratios of 0.6 or lower. The fix is simple. When you speak, hold steady eye contact with your listener. Not aggressive, not staring, just steady and grounded. When you listen, allow your eyes to relax naturally. You can still look at the speaker, but you don't need to lock on. The goal is comfort, not performance. Practice this in low-stakes conversations. Notice when you're making eye contact and when you're breaking it. Over time, the high-status ratio becomes automatic. Signal 3, pace. Fast movements signal anxiety. Slow movements signal control. Watch any high-status leader enter a room. They don't rush. They don't dart their eyes around looking for where to sit. They don't fumble with their belongings while trying to talk. They move at their own speed. This is called pace independence. Low-status individuals match the pace of their environment. If the room is rushed, they rush. If someone speaks quickly, they speed up. They're reactive. High-status individuals set their own tempo. When everyone else accelerates, they maintain. This creates a subtle contrast that reads as confidence. The practical application: slow down your movements by roughly 20%. Not dramatically, you don't want to seem lethargic. Just enough that you're clearly not rushing. When you sit, sit deliberately. When you reach for something, reach without hurrying. When you turn to face someone, turn with intention. This single adjustment changes how people perceive your entire presence. Signal 4, silence tolerance. This is the signal that separates good from great. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. When there's a pause in conversation, they rush to fill it. They add filler words. They over-explain. They ask unnecessary questions. Anything to avoid the void. This is a low-status signal. It broadcasts that you're uncomfortable with empty space, that you need constant validation that the interaction is going well. That silence feels like rejection. High-status individuals have a different relationship with silence. They pause before answering questions. Not long pauses, 1 to 2 seconds. Just enough to signal that they're actually considering the question rather than reflexively responding. They allow silence after making a point. This gives the point weight. It says, what I just said matters enough to sit with. And they don't rush to fill conversational gaps. They're comfortable letting silence exist. Here's a practical technique. It's called the 2-second rule. After someone asks you a question, pause for 2 seconds before responding. Just 2 seconds. It feels longer than it is. During those 2 seconds, maintain relaxed eye contact and keep your body still. This tiny pause accomplishes 3 things. It signals that you're thoughtful rather than reactive. It breaks the pattern of low-status rushing, and it gives your brain time to formulate a better response. Try it in your next meeting. You'll notice people lean in when you speak. They'll treat your words as more valuable, because silence before speech signals that the speech is worth waiting for. Let's put this together with 2 comparisons. Elite versus average comparison number 1. Average professionals rush to fill silence. Someone asks them a question, they start talking immediately, often before they know what they're going to say. They're afraid that silence signals incompetence, so they fill it with filler words, half-formed thoughts, and verbal clutter. High-respect professionals hold space before responding. They pause. They breathe. They let the question land. Then they deliver a response that's clean and complete. The pause didn't make them seem slow. It made their answer seem considered. The irony is sharp. The average professional talks more to seem smarter. The high-respect professional talks less and actually seems smarter. Elite versus average comparison number 2. Average professionals adapt their pace to match the room. If the environment is frantic, they become frantic. If others are rushing, they rush. They think this shows adaptability. What it actually shows is reactivity. High-respect professionals maintain their own tempo. When the room speeds up, they don't. This contrast creates instant differentiation. It reads as calm authority. People unconsciously think, that person isn't rattled by the chaos. That person is in control. You don't need to move dramatically slower than everyone else. Just don't let the environment dictate your speed. Set your own pace. So here's your 7-second checklist. Before any important interaction, a meeting, a presentation, a networking event, a difficult conversation, run through PPS. Posture, shoulders rolled back and dropped, spine lengthened, feet planted. Eye contact, steady while speaking, relaxed while listening. Pace, 20% slower than your instinct. Silence, 2-second pause before responding. For signals, 7 seconds. Complete control over how people perceive you before you say a word. Practice this sequence daily. Run it before video calls. Run it before walking into meetings. Run it before any moment where first impressions matter. Within 2 weeks, it becomes automatic. You won't need to consciously think through the checklist. Your body will default to the high-status pattern. But there's a problem. You can know all 4 signals perfectly and still fail to scan. Because there's something underneath posture, eye contact, pace, and silence that can sabotage everything. Nervous energy. When your nervous system is activated, when your heart rate is elevated, your breathing is shallow, your body is flooded with stress hormones. Your body leaks anxiety no matter what posture you hold. The signals break down. The performance falls apart. You can't fake calm. You have to actually create it. In the next chapter, you're going to learn the nervous energy off protocol. It's a 60-second reset that shuts down your anxiety response and creates genuine calm before any high-stakes situation. Navy SEALs use a version of this before combat. Surgeons use it before operations. Elite athletes use it before competition. And in about 12 minutes, you'll have it too. Chapter 3 starts now. Chapter 3, Nervous Energy Off, the 60-second reset. Navy SEALs use a breathing technique that shuts off anxiety in under a minute. You're about to learn it. Here's the situation most professionals face. You know what to do. You've read the books. You've watched the videos. You understand that posture matters, that eye contact signals status, that silence communicates confidence. And then you walk into the meeting. Your heart rate spikes. Your breathing gets shallow. Your hands want to fidget. Your voice comes out tighter than you intended. Everything you know disappears. Your body takes over. And your body is broadcasting one message. This person is nervous. This chapter fixes that. Permanently. By the time you finish listening, you'll have a 60-second protocol that resets your nervous system on demand. You can run it in a bathroom stall before a presentation. You can run it in your car before a difficult conversation. You can run it silently at a conference table before a negotiation begins. It's invisible, it's fast, and it works every single time. Let's start with why your body betrays you. When you perceive a threat, real or imagined, your sympathetic nervous system activates. This is the fight or flight response. Your body floods with adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow. Blood flows away from your prefrontal cortex and toward your muscles. This response evolved to help you survive physical danger. If a predator is chasing you, you don't need to think clearly. You need to run fast. The problem is that your nervous system can't distinguish between a lion attack and a performance review. To your ancient brain, social threat feels like physical threat. The possibility of embarrassment, rejection, or judgment triggers the same cascade of stress hormones as actual danger. This is why you can feel perfectly calm preparing for a presentation at home, and then feel your heart pounding the moment you stand up to deliver it. The context changed. Your nervous system detected threat, and it activated without your permission. Here's what most people don't realize. Once this response activates, you cannot think your way out of it. You cannot tell yourself to calm down. The stress hormones are already in your bloodstream. The physiological changes are already happening. Willpower is useless against biochemistry. But there's a backdoor. Your sympathetic nervous system has a counterpart, the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the rest and digest response. It slows your heart rate, deepens your breathing, and restores blood flow to your prefrontal cortex. It's the biological opposite of fight or flight. And here's the critical insight. You can manually activate your parasympathetic response. There's a specific nerve, the vagus nerve, that runs from your brainstem through your neck, chest, and abdomen. When you stimulate the vagus nerve, it triggers parasympathetic activation. It tells your body, the threat is over. You can stand down. The fastest way to stimulate the vagus nerve is through controlled breathing. This isn't meditation advice. This isn't wellness fluff. This is applied neuroscience used by military special forces, elite surgeons, and Olympic athletes. The technique is called box breathing. Some variations call it 4-4-4-4 breathing. The version I'm going to teach you is slightly modified for maximum effectiveness in professional settings. Here's the protocol. Step 1. Exhale completely. Push all the air out of your lungs. This is important. Most people start by inhaling, but the reset actually begins with emptying. Step 2. Inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4. Not 4 seconds. 4 counts at whatever pace feels natural. Fill your lungs from the bottom up. Feel your belly expand first, then your chest. Step 3. Hold your breath for a count of 4. Don't clamp down. Don't create tension. Just pause. Let the air sit. Step 4. Exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. This is the key modification. The exhale is longer than the inhale. This extended exhale is what activates the vagus nerve most effectively. Step 5. Hold empty for a count of 2. Just a brief pause before the next cycle. That's one cycle. Exhale. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Hold for 2. 3 complete cycles takes approximately 60 seconds. And 3 cycles is enough to measurably shift your nervous system state. Remember this, you can't fake calm, but you can create it. In 60 seconds. A 2014 study published in the International Journal of Cardiology by researchers at the HeartMath Institute found that just 90 seconds of controlled, coherent breathing can reduce cortisol levels by up to 23% while increasing heart rate variability, a key marker of stress resilience. A study published in Frontiers in Psychology showed that slow breathing techniques activate the parasympathetic response within the first 30 seconds. This isn't a long-term practice. This is an immediate intervention. You can go from fight or flight to calm authority in 1 minute. But breathing is only half the protocol. The second half involves your body. When your nervous system is activated, your body contracts. Your shoulders rise toward your ears. Your jaw clenches. Your hands tighten. Your weight shifts forward onto your toes, as if preparing to run. These physical contractions send feedback to your brain that reinforces the threat response. Your brain reads your body and thinks, "We must still be in danger." The stress continues. To complete the reset, you need to reverse these physical patterns. While you're doing the breathing cycles, add these 3 physical adjustments. First, drop your shoulders. Consciously roll them back once, then let them fall. Don't hold them in position. Just release the tension and let gravity do the work. Second, unclench your jaw. Let your lips part slightly. You can even let your tongue rest on the floor of your mouth rather than pressing against the roof. This small adjustment releases significant tension from your face and neck. Third, plant your feet. Feel the ground beneath you. If you're sitting, feel the chair supporting your weight. If you're standing, distribute your weight evenly between both feet. Press down slightly through your heels. This grounding action sends safety signals to your nervous system. So the complete 60-second protocol looks like this. Find a private space if possible. A bathroom stall works. Your car works. Even a quiet corner works. If you can't find privacy, you can run a subtle version at your seat. The breathing is silent, and the physical adjustments are small enough to go unnoticed. Begin with a complete exhale. As you exhale, drop your shoulders and unclench your jaw. Inhale for 4 counts through your nose. Feel your feet on the ground. Hold for 4 counts. Keep your body relaxed and still. Exhale for 6 counts through your mouth. Let any remaining tension leave with the breath. Hold empty for 2 counts. Repeat for 3 full cycles. When you finish, pause for a moment before moving. Notice the difference in your body. Your heart rate has slowed. Your breathing is deeper. Your muscles are looser. You feel heavier, more grounded, more present. This is the state you want to enter every high-stakes situation from. Now let's talk about timing. The protocol works best as a preventive measure, not a rescue. If you wait until you're already flooded with stress hormones, you can still use it, but it takes longer to work. The adrenaline is already in your system. The better approach is to run the protocol before you enter the high-stakes environment. 5 minutes before a presentation, find privacy and do 3 cycles. 2 minutes before walking into a negotiation, do 3 cycles in your car. Right before a video call begins, do 1 quick cycle with your camera off. Make this automatic. Build it into your pre-performance routine. Just like an athlete warms up before competition, you warm down your nervous system before communication. Here's how high-respect professionals actually use this. They don't wait until they feel nervous. They assume activation will happen and they preempt it. Every important meeting, every presentation, every difficult conversation, they run the protocol beforehand as a default. This is the difference between hoping you'll stay calm and engineering calm. Hope is not a strategy. Protocols are. Let me give you a comparison to make this concrete. Average professionals react to nervous energy. They notice their heart pounding and try to ignore it. They feel their voice tightening and push through anyway. They white-knuckle their way through high-stakes moments, hoping adrenaline will somehow help them perform. Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. High-respect professionals reset nervous energy before it accumulates. They treat their nervous system like equipment that needs to be calibrated before use. They don't fight against biology, they work with it. And they enter every important moment from a place of physiological calm, not psychological warfare. The result is visible. When you're not fighting your own nervous system, your body language becomes cleaner. Your posture stays open because you're not subconsciously bracing. Your eye contact stays steady because you're not scanning for threats. Your pace stays controlled because you're not rushing to escape discomfort. Everything you learned in Chapter 2 becomes easier when your nervous system is regulated. The signals flow naturally instead of being forced. There's one more element to address: the micro-reset. Sometimes you don't have 60 seconds. Sometimes the stress response hits in the middle of a meeting and you need to reset without anyone noticing. Here's the abbreviated version. Take one slow breath. Exhale for twice as long as you inhale. As you exhale, drop your shoulders 1 inch and unclench your jaw. That's it. One breath. 3 physical adjustments. It takes 6 seconds. This micro reset won't fully clear an activated stress response, but it will interrupt the escalation. It gives you a moment of clarity. It stops the spiral. You can use it when someone asks you a challenging question. Take one slow breath before answering. You can use it when you feel yourself starting to rush. One slow breath, then deliberately slow your pace. You can use it when you notice your shoulders creeping up toward your ears. One slow breath, shoulders drop. Build this into your communication patterns. Let the breath be your reset button. So here's where you stand. You now have 2 protocols. The full 60-second nervous energy off reset for pre-performance preparation, and the 6-second micro reset for in-the-moment regulation. Together, they give you control over your nervous system. You're no longer at the mercy of your stress response. You can create calm on demand. This is not optional. This is foundational. Every framework that follows, the boundary language, the conversation system, the workplace scripts, depends on your ability to deliver them from a regulated state. A perfectly worded boundary sounds weak when delivered by someone whose voice is shaking. A brilliant meeting contribution gets dismissed when it comes from someone who looks uncomfortable. The words matter, but the state matters more. Nail the state first. The words land better. Now, speaking of words, you've learned how to control your body. You've learned how to control your nervous system. The next piece is language. Specifically, the language of boundaries. Most people struggle to set boundaries because they don't have the words. They know they should say no, but they don't know how to say it without sounding harsh. They know they should push back, but they don't know how to push back without creating conflict. The result is one of 2 patterns. Either they avoid setting boundaries entirely and get walked over, or they set boundaries clumsily and damage the relationship. Neither earns respect. In Chapter 4, you're going to learn the boundary language ladder. 3 levels of phrases that make people take your limits seriously without making them resent you. Soft phrases for minor pushback. Firm phrases for repeated violations. And final phrases for when the line has been crossed. These aren't suggestions. They're scripts. Copy them exactly, and they work. Chapter 4 starts now. Chapter 4, Boundary Power, the Language of Respect. A 10-year workplace study found that people who set clear boundaries get promoted 31% faster. Here's the language they use. Let's address the contradiction most professionals live with. You know boundaries matter. You've heard the advice. You understand that saying no protects your time, your energy, and your sanity. And yet, when the moment comes, when your manager asks you to take on another project, when a colleague interrupts your work for the 3rd time today, when someone crosses a line you've silently drawn, you freeze. You say yes when you mean no. You soften when you should hold firm. You apologize for having limits. Then you go home frustrated. Not at them, at yourself. This chapter ends that pattern. The problem is not willpower. The problem is not assertiveness. The problem is that no one taught you the actual words. You don't have the language. And without language, boundaries stay in your head instead of shaping your reality. By the end of this chapter, you'll have a complete library of boundary phrases organized into 3 levels. Soft phrases for everyday pushback, firm phrases for repeated violations, and final phrases for when the line cannot move. These are not suggestions to adapt. These are scripts to copy. Use them exactly as written and they work. Let's start with why boundaries create respect. This seems counterintuitive. Most people believe that being accommodating earns respect. They think that saying yes makes people like them, that being flexible demonstrates they're a team player. The research shows the opposite. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who set clear boundaries are perceived as more competent and more likable than people who don't. Another study from Columbia Business School found that negotiators who stated their limits clearly were rated as more trustworthy than those who remained vague. Here's the psychology behind this. When you set a boundary, you signal that you have standards. Standards imply value. If you're willing to protect your time, your time must be worth protecting. If you're willing to say no, your yes must actually mean something. Conversely, when you have no boundaries, you signal that you have no standards. Your time isn't valuable enough to protect. Your yes means nothing because you never say no. This is why the most accommodating people in your office are often the least respected. They've trained everyone to expect compliance. And compliance is not the same as contribution. Boundaries don't damage relationships. Boundaries define relationships. They tell people how to treat you. Without them, people guess. And they usually guess wrong. Now, here's where most boundary advice fails. It gives you one approach for all situations. Just say no. Be direct. Don't apologize. This is incomplete. Different situations require different levels of firmness. A first-time request from a well-meaning colleague needs a different response than a repeated violation from someone who should know better. That's why I created the boundary language ladder. 3 levels, 3 different intensities. You start at level 1 and only escalate if necessary. Level 1 is the soft boundary. This is for first-time situations, minor requests, and people who probably don't realize they're crossing a line. The goal is to redirect without creating friction. Soft boundaries are collaborative in tone. They acknowledge the other person's needs while stating your limit. They leave room for problem solving. Here are the exact phrases. I can't take that on right now, but I could look at it next week. I'm in the middle of something. Can we find another time? That doesn't work for me today. What about Thursday? I'd like to help, but I'm at capacity. Can we figure out who else might take this? I have a commitment during that time. Is there flexibility on the schedule? Notice the structure. Each phrase has 3 parts. First, a clear statement of the limit. Second, an acknowledgement or softener. Third, an alternative or redirect. This structure is critical. The limit comes first. If you bury your no inside qualifications and apologies, people miss it. Lead with the boundary, then soften. Most professionals make the opposite mistake. They soften first, then try to slide the boundary in at the end. So, I'm really sorry and I totally would if I could, but maybe, if it's okay, I might not be able to. By the time they reach the actual no, they've already undermined it. Limit first, softener second, alternative third. Level 2 is the firm boundary. This is for repeated situations, people who ignored your level 1, or requests that cross a clearer line. The goal is to hold your position without aggression. Firm boundaries remove the softeners. They're shorter. They don't offer alternatives unless you genuinely want to provide one. They're statements, not negotiations. Here are the exact phrases. That's not going to work for me. I'm not available for that. I won't be able to do that. I need you to respect this limit. I've already said no to this. That hasn't changed. This is outside what I can commit to. A friend of mine negotiates high-stakes contracts for a living. Deals worth tens of millions of dollars. Rooms full of aggressive lawyers and executives trying to dominate. She's 5'3" and speaks softly. And she wins. Consistently. I asked her once how she holds her ground against people who try to bulldoze her with volume and aggression. Her answer was simple. I let them be loud. Then I say what I need to say. Once. Quietly. And I don't repeat myself or explain further. I just wait. She described a negotiation where the opposing party spent 15 minutes making demands, raising their voice, listing consequences. When they finished, she paused for 3 full seconds. Then she said, "That doesn't work for us. Here's what we can do." 1 sentence. Then silence. The silence was excruciating, she told me. Every instinct screamed at her to fill it, to explain, to justify. She didn't. After what felt like an eternity, the other party started negotiating with themselves. They softened their demands. They offered alternatives. They did her work for her, because she had created a vacuum that they felt compelled to fill. Loudness is a lever, she told me. But silence is a weapon. Most people don't know how to use it because they can't tolerate holding it. That's level 2 in action. Not aggression. Not volume. Just clarity, delivered once, followed by the discipline to wait. Notice what's missing. No apology. No excessive explanation. No alternative offered unless appropriate. This feels uncomfortable at first. You'll feel the urge to add, "I'm sorry, but," or "I hope you understand." Resist that urge. Every qualifier you add weakens the boundary. The firm boundary is not rude. It's clear. Rudeness involves insults, condescension, or aggression. Clarity involves stating your limit directly and stopping. You have the right to be clear. Here's when to escalate from level 1 to level 2. You move to level 2 when level 1 didn't work. If you gave a soft boundary and the person pushed back, ignored it, or returned with the same request, they've demonstrated that soft isn't landing. You're not being harsh by escalating. You're being accurate. They showed you that they need firmer language. You also go directly to level 2 for larger requests. If someone asks for something significant, your weekend, your evening, a major commitment, you don't owe them a soft redirect. You can go straight to firm. Match your response to the size of the request and the history of the relationship. Level 3 is the final boundary. This is for serious violations, repeated disrespect, or situations where the relationship itself is at stake. The goal is to end the negotiation and make clear that this line does not move. Final boundaries are rare. You won't use them often, but when you need them, you need to have them ready. Here are the exact phrases. I've made my decision. This isn't open for discussion. I need this to stop. Now, if this continues, I'll need to escalate to someone else. We're done discussing this. I'm going to need you to leave my office. This conversation is over. These are not phrases you say casually. They're phrases for situations where someone has repeatedly violated your boundaries despite clear communication. They signal that the relationship rules have changed. Most people never reach level 3 because levels 1 and 2 work. Clear boundaries, consistently enforced, train people how to treat you. Escalation becomes unnecessary when your earlier boundaries are respected. But if you never escalate when needed, people learn that your boundaries are negotiable. They learn that pushing works. And they keep pushing. Having level 3 language ready, even if you never use it, gives you confidence at every level. You know you have somewhere to go. You're not trapped. Let's look at how this plays out. Average professionals avoid setting boundaries until they're overwhelmed. They say yes repeatedly, resentment builds, and then they either explode with a sudden level 3 response or collapse entirely. Neither earns respect. High-respect professionals set boundaries early and consistently. They use level 1 phrases as a default. They escalate to level 2 when needed. And they rarely reach level 3 because they've trained their environment to respect their limits. The difference is not personality. It's practice. High-respect professionals have practiced these phrases until they come naturally. They don't need to summon courage in the moment. They just run the script. Here's another comparison. Average professionals apologize for their boundaries. I'm so sorry, but I just can't right now. I feel terrible, but I have to say no. I hope this doesn't upset you, but the apology signals that you believe your boundary is a problem, that you're doing something wrong by having limits, that the other person has a right to be disappointed. High-respect professionals state their boundaries without apology. I can't take that on right now. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available. No apology. No guilt. Just information. This isn't about being cold. It's about being accurate. You're not wronging someone by having limits. You don't owe an apology for protecting your capacity. Now, there's one common fear to address. You might worry, if I set boundaries, people will think I'm not a team player. They'll see me as difficult. The research shows the opposite. People who set clear boundaries are rated as more reliable and more valuable than those who don't. Why? Because when they say yes, it means something. Their commitments are trustworthy because they're selective. Compare this to the person who says yes to everything. Their yes is meaningless. Their commitments are unreliable because they've overextended. They're the team player who never actually delivers. Boundaries don't make you less valuable. Boundaries are what make your value deliverable. Let me give you a practical application. Think about a request you said yes to recently that you should have declined. Replay the conversation in your mind. Now, insert one of the level 1 phrases. I can't take that on right now, but I could look at it next week. Feel how that would have changed the dynamic. You'd still be collaborative. You'd still be helpful. But you'd have protected your capacity to deliver on your actual priorities. Now think about a repeated violation. Someone who keeps interrupting your work, pushing past your limits, or expecting you to accommodate them. What level 2 phrase would apply? I've already said no to this. That hasn't changed. Feel the firmness. Feel how it closes the loop. You're not being aggressive. You're being definitive. This is the practice. Run these scenarios in your head. Rehearse the phrases until they're ready when you need them. So here's your system. Level 1 for first-time requests and minor pushback. Limit, softener, alternative. Level 2 for repeated violations and significant requests. Limit only, no apology. Level 3 for serious violations that threaten the relationship. Final, no negotiation. Start at level 1. Escalate only when necessary. And remember, setting a boundary is not a conflict. It's a clarification. You're telling people how to work with you. That's information they need. Practice these phrases until they're automatic. They will change how people treat you. But boundaries are only half of the equation. Boundaries protect you. They create respect through limits. They define what you won't accept. Connection does something different. Connection elevates you. It creates respect through understanding. It defines what you offer. The professionals who earn the most respect do both. They set clear boundaries, and they build deep connections. One without the other is incomplete. In the next chapter, you're going to learn the 3-layer conversation system. It's a framework for moving any conversation from surface small talk to genuine connection in under 3 minutes. You'll learn why most conversations stay shallow, what questions move them deeper, and the exact transition phrases that make depth feel natural instead of forced. This is how quiet people build networks that loud people can't touch. Chapter 5 starts now. Chapter 5, Conversation Precision, the 3-layer system. Imagine walking into any room and knowing exactly how to move a conversation from awkward to meaningful in under 3 minutes. Not through tricks, not through manipulation. Just a simple system that turns shallow exchanges into real connection. This is what most people get wrong about conversation. They think good conversations happen by accident. They believe some people are naturally gifted talkers and others are doomed to awkward small talk forever. This is false. Good conversations have structure. They follow predictable patterns. And those patterns can be learned, practiced, and deployed at will. The framework I'm about to teach you is called the 3-layer conversation system. It explains why most conversations feel empty, what makes certain conversations feel meaningful, and exactly how to move from one to the other without being weird, pushy, or intrusive. By the end of this chapter, you'll have a map for every conversation you enter. Let's start with why small talk feels so unsatisfying. You're at a networking event. Someone approaches. They ask where you work. You answer. You ask them the same. They answer. There's a pause. Someone mentions the weather. Someone mentions the venue. Another pause. You both look around for an escape route. This interaction follows a script. It's the script everyone defaults to when they don't know what else to do. And it's the script that leaves both people feeling like they wasted their time. Here's the problem. This conversation never left the first layer. The 3-layer system identifies 3 distinct depths that conversations can operate at. Each layer serves a purpose. Each layer feels different. And most conversations get stuck at layer 1 and never progress. Layer 1 is the surface layer. This is where all conversations start. It's factual. It's safe. It's predictable. Surface layer exchanges involve observable information. Where do you work? Where are you from? What do you do? How do you know the host? What's your role? These questions aren't bad. They're necessary. They establish basic context. They give you something to work with. But they're not enough. The surface layer is like the lobby of a building. You have to pass through it to get anywhere else, but you don't want to live there. If you spend the entire conversation in the lobby, you'll leave without ever seeing what's inside. Most people stay in the surface layer because it's safe. There's no risk of rejection. There's no vulnerability required. You're just exchanging information. But there's also no connection. You can't build a real relationship in the lobby. Layer 2 is the value layer. This is where conversations start to feel interesting. It moves from facts to meaning, from what someone does to why they do it, from information to perspective. Value layer exchanges involve opinions, interests, motivations, and interpretations. What do you enjoy about your work? What drew you to this field? What are you working on that excites you? What's your take on this situation? Notice the shift. You're no longer asking for data. You're asking for insight. You're inviting the other person to share something that requires thought, something that reveals who they are. This is where quiet people have a massive advantage. Extroverts often dominate surface layer conversations because they can fill airtime with facts and observations. But value layer conversations require listening. They require follow-up questions. They require genuine curiosity about what the other person thinks. This is your territory. Layer 3 is the depth layer. The person who asks better questions controls the conversation without saying much at all. This is where real connection lives. It moves from perspective to experience, from opinions to stories, from what someone thinks to what they've lived through. Depth layer exchanges involve personal experiences, challenges, aspirations, and vulnerabilities. What was that transition like for you? What made you realize that was the right path? What's the hardest part of what you're working toward? What would it mean to you if this succeeded? These questions invite stories. They invite emotion. They invite the kind of sharing that creates genuine bonds. You don't reach layer 3 in every conversation. It's not appropriate for a 5-minute chat at a conference. But when you do reach it, with the right person at the right time, you create the kind of connection that people remember. Now here's the critical insight that makes this system work. You cannot skip layers. If you try to jump from surface to depth without passing through value, you'll make people uncomfortable. They'll feel interrogated. They'll pull back. Imagine meeting someone and within 2 minutes asking, "What's the biggest regret of your career?" That's a depth layer question, but you haven't earned it. You haven't built the bridge. The layers are sequential. Surface establishes context. Value establishes interest. Depth establishes connection. You move through them in order, at a pace the other person is comfortable with. The skill is knowing how to transition. Let me give you the transition phrases. Moving from surface to value requires what I call a value bridge question. This is a question that takes a factual answer and asks for the meaning behind it. Someone tells you they work in product management. That's surface. The value bridge is, what drew you to that? What do you enjoy about it? Someone tells you they just moved from Chicago. That's surface. The value bridge is, that's a big change. What made you decide to make the move? Someone tells you they're working on a new project. That's surface. The value bridge is, what's exciting about it for you? The formula is simple. Take the fact they shared and ask about the motivation, the meaning, or the opinion behind it. This transition feels natural because you're showing genuine interest. You're not interrogating. You're following up. You're saying, in effect, "That's interesting. Tell me more about why." Moving from value to depth requires a depth invitation. This is a question or statement that opens space for personal experience or vulnerability. Someone tells you they love their work because they get to solve complex problems. That's value. The depth invitation is, when did you first realize you were wired that way? Was there a moment? Someone tells you they moved because they wanted a fresh start. That's value. The depth invitation is, I get that. Starting over takes courage. What was the hardest part of making that leap? Someone tells you they're excited about their project because it could really help people. That's value. The depth invitation is, that sounds meaningful. What would it mean to you personally if it succeeded? The depth invitation works because it's not demanding. It's an invitation. You're opening a door. They can walk through or stay where they are. Either is fine. If they walk through, you've reached genuine connection. If they stay at value, you still had a much better conversation than 90% of interactions. Here's what makes this powerful for quiet people. The 3-layer system is not about talking more. It's about asking better. Each transition question is short. The other person does most of the talking. You're guiding the conversation with minimal words, but maximum impact. This is quiet charisma in action. You're not dominating the conversation. You're deepening it. Let me show you the contrast. Average conversationalists stay on the surface and talk about themselves. They hear, I work in product management, and respond with their own job, their own company, their own situation. The conversation becomes 2 parallel monologues. No one is actually listening. No one is going deeper. High-connection conversationalists move through the layers by asking about the other person. They hear, I work in product management, and respond with, what drew you to that? They're curious. They're following up. They're inviting depth. The irony is that the person who talks less is often remembered more because they made the other person feel heard. And feeling heard is rare. Here's another comparison. Average conversationalists ask questions but don't listen to the answers. They're already thinking about what they'll say next. When the other person finishes, they pivot to their own point. The conversation never builds momentum. High-connection conversationalists build on what they hear. Each question flows from the previous answer. They're not performing curiosity. They're actually curious. The conversation feels like a journey, not a checklist. This is the key. The three-layer system only works if you actually listen. The transition questions emerge from what the other person says. You can't script them in advance. You have to be present, but you can practice the structure. And once the structure is internalized, the right questions come naturally. Let me give you a practical application. Think about a conversation you have regularly, maybe with a colleague, maybe at networking events, maybe on dates. Map it to the layers. Where do you typically stay? If most of your conversations hover at surface, job titles, hometowns, basic facts, you now know why they feel empty. You're stuck in the lobby. What value bridge question could you add? What follow-up could take the factual answer they give and ask about the meaning behind it? Practice this once per day, just once. In one conversation, ask a value bridge question you wouldn't have asked before. Notice how the conversation shifts. Notice how the other person responds. Within a week, this becomes automatic. Now let's talk about pacing. Not every conversation should go deep. Sometimes surface is appropriate. Sometimes you don't have time for more. Sometimes the other person isn't interested in going further. The three-layer system is not a demand. It's an option. It gives you the ability to go deeper when depth is appropriate. It doesn't require you to push every conversation to layer 3. Read the signals. If someone gives short, closed answers to your value bridge question, they may not want to go further. That's fine. You can stay at surface and exit gracefully. But if someone's eyes light up, if they lean in, if they give a longer answer, that's the signal to continue. They're ready for more. You can offer a depth invitation. Let the other person's engagement guide your pace. There's one more piece to cover: reciprocity. As you ask deeper questions, the other person may ask them back. This is natural. It's healthy. It's part of how connection works. Be ready to share at the same layer you're inviting. If you ask about someone's motivations, be prepared to share yours. If you invite vulnerability, be willing to offer some of your own. This doesn't mean oversharing. It means matching. If they share something personal, you share something equivalent. This balance is what makes the conversation feel mutual rather than extractive. Quiet people sometimes hide behind questions. They keep asking and never share. This creates an imbalance. It makes the other person feel exposed. The goal is exchange. You're building a bridge from both sides. So here's your system. Every conversation starts at surface. Use it to gather context, but don't stay there. Ask a value bridge question to discover why something matters to them. Listen for engagement signals. If they're opening up, offer a depth invitation. Match their sharing with your own. And remember, you don't have to reach depth every time. Value alone is a massive upgrade from where most conversations stay. Practice the transitions. Practice the listening. Practice the matching. This is how quiet people build networks that loud people cannot touch. But frameworks only get you so far. At some point, you need the specific words for specific situations. The next 2 chapters give you exactly that. Chapter 6 covers meetings and workplace scripts. What to say when someone interrupts you. What to say when someone takes credit for your idea. What to say when you need to disagree without creating conflict. Chapter 7 covers networking and dating scripts. How to open a conversation. How to exit gracefully. How to follow up. How to navigate first dates and awkward silences. These are not guidelines. They're exact sentences you can copy and use immediately. Chapter 6 starts now. Chapter 6. Meetings and work scripts. You're in a meeting. Someone cuts you off mid-sentence. Someone restates your idea as if it were theirs. Someone dismisses your suggestion without consideration. What do you say? Most people say nothing. They freeze. They let the moment pass. And then they spend the rest of the day replaying it, thinking of what they should have said. This chapter gives you the scripts in advance. By the time you finish listening, You'll have exact sentences for the most common workplace challenges: interruption recovery, idea protection, confident disagreement, clear proposals, saying no to unreasonable requests. These are not principles to interpret. These are phrases to copy. Memorize them, practice them, and deploy them the next time you're in the situation. Let's start with the most common problem: getting interrupted. Interruption is a status game. When someone cuts you off and you stop talking, you've just signaled that their voice matters more than yours. You've given up the floor. You've accepted lower status. Most people stop because they think it's polite. They don't want to talk over someone. They don't want to create conflict. But here's what actually happens. When you yield every time, people learn that your contributions are interruptible. They learn that you'll give up if they push. And they keep pushing. The high-respect response is different. You don't fight. You don't raise your voice. You simply continue. Here's the script. When someone interrupts, keep talking for 3 to 4 more words while maintaining steady eye contact with the group. Then use this phrase: "I'll finish my point. Then I'd like to hear yours." That's it. Calm. Clear. No aggression. Let me break down why this works. First, you don't stop immediately. The 3 to 4 additional words signal that you noticed the interruption and chose not to yield. This is a subtle but powerful status move. Second, you explicitly name what's happening. "I'll finish my point" makes the interruption visible without being accusatory. You're not saying, "You interrupted me." You're saying, "I'm going to complete my thought." Third, you acknowledge them. "Then I'd like to hear yours" shows that you're not dismissing their contribution. You're sequencing it. They'll get their turn after you. Practice this phrase until it's automatic. The next time someone cuts you off, you won't freeze. You'll have the words ready. Here's the truth about respect. It's not given to those who wait politely. It's given to those who claim their space. Here's a variation for persistent interrupters. Some people interrupt repeatedly. They didn't get the message the first time. For these situations, use a slightly firmer version. "Let me finish this thought." Go ahead. The "go ahead" at the end is strategic. It puts you in control of who speaks when. You're granting them permission to talk after you've finished. This reframes the power dynamic without creating conflict. Now let's address the second common problem: idea theft. You share an idea in a meeting. Someone else restates it moments later as if they thought of it. The group responds to their version. You sit there wondering whether to say something. Most people stay silent. They don't want to seem petty. They tell themselves it doesn't matter who gets credit. But it does matter. Visibility is currency in organizations. When your ideas are attributed to others, your value becomes invisible. Here's the script for reclaiming your idea. "I'm glad that idea is resonating." That's exactly what I was suggesting when I said brief restatement. Let me add one more layer to it. This phrase accomplishes 3 things. First, you don't accuse. You're not saying, "You stole my idea." That creates defensiveness and makes you look petty. Instead, you're connecting their statement to your original contribution. Second, you restate your version. That's exactly what I was suggesting when I said. Reminds everyone that you said it first. You're creating a clear record. Third, you add value. Let me add one more layer: positions you as the owner of the idea. You're developing it further. This makes it harder for anyone else to claim ownership. The key is tone. Deliver this with calm confidence, not frustration. You're clarifying, not complaining. Here's a more direct version for blatant theft. If someone literally repeats your idea as their own, you can be more explicit. "Yes, that's the point I made a few minutes ago. I'd like to build on it with a specific next step." This version names the repetition directly while immediately pivoting to value. You're not dwelling on the theft. You're reasserting ownership and moving forward. Now let's cover confident disagreement. Disagreeing in meetings is high risk for many professionals. They worry about offending colleagues, challenging superiors, or being seen as difficult. So they either stay silent or soften their disagreement until it's meaningless. Both approaches fail. Silence means your perspective is lost. Over-softening means your perspective is ignored. The goal is clear disagreement without personal attack. You're challenging the idea, not the person. Here are the scripts. For mild disagreement: "I see it differently. My concern is specific issue." What if we alternative approach? For stronger disagreement: I don't think that approach will work. Here's why. One clear reason. I'd suggest alternative instead. For disagreeing with a superior, I want to make sure I understand the goal. If the goal is X, I'm concerned that this approach might problem. Could we explore alternative? Notice the structure in each case. You state your position clearly. You give a specific reason. You offer an alternative. The reason is critical. Disagreement without reasoning sounds like stubbornness. Disagreement with reasoning sounds like expertise. The alternative is also critical. If you only point out problems, you're a critic. If you offer solutions, you're a contributor. Always bring an alternative when you disagree. Here's a comparison to make this concrete. Average professionals hedge their disagreement. They say things like, I'm not sure, but maybe, possibly, this might not be the best approach, but I could be wrong, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but perhaps we could consider. By the time they finish, no one knows what they think. The disagreement is buried under so many qualifiers that it disappears. High-respect professionals state their disagreement cleanly. I see it differently. My concern is timeline. This approach adds 3 weeks. What if we phase the rollout instead? Same disagreement. Completely different impact. The second version gets heard. The first version gets ignored. Let's move to confident proposals. When you suggest something in a meeting, your language determines how seriously it's taken. Weak language invites dismissal. Strong language invites consideration. Here's the weak version that most people use. Maybe we could possibly think about trying something like a different approach. If everyone's okay with that? Here's the strong version. I recommend we specific action. Here's why. One clear reason. This would specific benefit. The structure is recommendation, reasoning, benefit. Let me give you more examples. Instead of, what if we maybe looked at the data? Say, I recommend we review the Q3 data before deciding. It shows a pattern we should consider. Instead of, I was thinking, maybe, we could try talking to customers. Say, I recommend we run 5 customer interviews this week. They'll validate whether this assumption holds. Instead of, it might be good to involve the design team. Say, I recommend we bring in design at this stage. Early input will save us rework later. The word recommend is strategic. It's stronger than suggest or think. It implies expertise. It implies that you've considered the options and arrived at a conclusion. Practice replacing maybe we could with I recommend we. This single word swap transforms how your contributions land. Now let's cover a scenario that challenges many professionals, saying no to requests from superiors. Your manager asks you to take on another project. You're already at capacity. Saying yes means everything suffers. Saying no feels risky. Here's the script. I want to deliver quality on this. Right now I'm at capacity with current priorities. If this is urgent, I'll need help deciding what to deprioritize. What would you like me to move? This phrase is powerful because it does 3 things. First, you signal commitment to quality. You're not lazy. You're not unwilling. You want to do good work. Second, you state the constraint honestly. You're at capacity. This is a fact, not a complaint. Third, you put the prioritization decision back on them. You're not refusing. You're asking for guidance. If they want this new project, they have to tell you what to drop. This reframes the conversation from will you do this to what should we trade off. That's a much safer position for you. Here's a variation for unreasonable deadlines. I want to set a realistic expectation. To deliver this at quality, I need time frame. If the deadline is fixed, I can deliver reduced scope. Which would you prefer? Same structure. You're not saying no. You're saying here are the options. You're letting them choose between quality, scope, and timeline. This approach earns more respect than either compliance or refusal. You're being honest about constraints while remaining collaborative. Let me give you one more comparison. Average professionals react emotionally to unreasonable requests. They either agree resentfully and burn out, or refuse defensively and damage the relationship. Their response is driven by the stress of the moment. High-respect professionals respond strategically. They acknowledge the request, state constraints clearly, and offer options. They treat it as a problem to solve together, not a battle to win. The difference is preparation. High-respect professionals have practiced these phrases. When the moment comes, they're not scrambling. They're executing. Now let's cover one final workplace scenario: recovering from a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. The difference is how you handle them. Most people either over-apologize, which undermines their status, or under-acknowledge, which damages trust. Here's the script for owning a mistake with authority. I made an error on specific thing. Here's what happened. Brief explanation, no excuses. Here's how I'm fixing it. Corrective action. It won't happen again. For parts, name the mistake. Explain what happened. State the fix. Commit to prevention. This is complete accountability without groveling. You're not begging for forgiveness. You're demonstrating that you've already taken control. Compare this to the common mistake response. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I feel terrible. It was just that so many things were going on, and I should have checked, and I'm really, really sorry. That response is all emotion and no action. It makes you seem less competent, not more accountable. The high-respect version moves through the mistake quickly and focuses on resolution. That's what leaders do. So here's your toolkit. For interruptions, I'll finish my point, then I'd like to hear yours. For idea theft, I'm glad that's resonating. That's exactly what I was suggesting when I said X. Let me add one layer. For disagreement, I see it differently. My concern is X. What if we alternative? For proposals, I recommend we action. Here's why. Reason. This would benefit. For saying no, I want to deliver quality. I'm at capacity with X. What should I deprioritize? For mistakes, I made an error. Here's what happened. Here's how I'm fixing it. It won't happen again. Memorize these. Practice them out loud. Run them in your head before meetings. When the moment arrives, you'll have the words. But work is not the only arena where scripts matter. Networking events, first dates, cocktail parties, awkward social situations where you don't know what to say. These moments require a different set of phrases, shorter, lighter, more versatile. In Chapter 7, you'll get the social scripts. How to open conversations with strangers. How to exit gracefully without being rude. How to follow up after meeting someone. How to navigate the unique pressures of first dates. These scripts are designed for quiet people. They don't require you to be the life of the party. They just require you to know what to say at critical moments. Chapter 7 starts now. Chapter 7: Networking and Dating Scripts. Most networking advice is written by extroverts for extroverts. This chapter is different. You've heard the standard tips. Work the room. Talk to everyone. Be the most memorable person at the event. Collect as many business cards as possible. This advice assumes you're energized by crowds, that you enjoy small talk with strangers, that more connections equal better outcomes. For quiet professionals, this advice is exhausting and ineffective. Here's the truth that nobody tells you. The person who talks to 50 people and makes shallow impressions loses to the person who talks to 5 people and makes deep impressions. Quantity is an extrovert strategy. Quality is an introvert advantage. This chapter gives you the scripts that make quality connections possible. How to open conversations without feeling awkward. How to exit gracefully without being rude. How to follow up in a way that actually builds relationships. And how to navigate the unique pressure of first dates. These scripts are designed for economy. Short sentences. Maximum impact. No rambling required. Let's start with opening conversations. The hardest part of networking for quiet people is the approach. You see someone you want to talk to. You don't know what to say. You hesitate. The moment passes. The problem is that you're trying to invent the perfect opener in real time. This is a losing strategy. Under social pressure, your brain doesn't generate its best material. It generates anxiety. The solution is to have openers ready before you arrive. Here are 5 opening scripts that work in any networking context. Opener 1, the observation bridge. I noticed something specific about them or the situation. What brings you to this event? Example: I noticed you were talking with the speaker earlier. What brings you to this event? This works because you're showing that you're observant, not random. You noticed something. That's flattering. And the follow-up question is easy to answer. Opener 2, the honest admission. I don't know many people here yet. I'm name. What's your connection to this event? This works because it's disarming. You're admitting mild vulnerability. Most people respond warmly to honesty. They often admit they don't know many people either. Opener 3, the contextual hook. I just heard something from the presentation or environment. What did you think of that? Example. I just heard the speaker mention that their company pivoted 3 times. What did you think of that approach? This works because you're creating instant common ground. You both experienced the same thing. Now you're discussing it together. Opener 4, the simple direct. Hi, I'm Name. I wanted to introduce myself. What do you do? This is the most straightforward option. No cleverness required. Just direct, confident introduction. Sometimes simple is best. Opener 5, the warm referral. I think we're both connected to mutual contact or organization. I'm Name. If you have any connection at all, same company, same alumni network, same industry, use it. Shared context accelerates trust. Pick 2 or 3 of these openers and memorize them. Before any networking event, decide which one you'll use. When you arrive, you won't need to think. You'll execute. Now let's cover the skill that most people lack entirely, the graceful exit. Quiet people often get trapped in conversations. They don't know how to leave without seeming rude. So they stay too long, energy draining, looking for an escape that never comes. The graceful exit is a learnable skill, and it's actually a gift to both people. Most conversations have a natural endpoint. Extending past that point makes both people uncomfortable. Exiting cleanly respects everyone's time. Here are 4 exit scripts. Exit 1, the forward motion. It was great meeting you. I'm going to continue making my way around the room. Let's stay in touch. This is the standard professional exit. You're not rejecting them. You're continuing your purpose for being there. Completely normal. Exit 2, the honest transition. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I want to be mindful of your time, so I'll let you mingle. Can I get your contact info before I go? This frames your exit as consideration for them. You're being respectful of their time. And you're collecting contact information, which shows genuine interest. Exit 3, the introduction bridge. You know who you should meet? Name. They're working on something similar. Let me introduce you before I head off. This is the most elegant exit. You're providing value on your way out. You're connecting them with someone relevant. You leave as a giver, not an escaper. Exit 4, the direct close. I need to catch someone before they leave. Great talking with you. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Short, direct, no apology. You have somewhere to be. Completely acceptable. The key to all exits is confidence. Don't apologize excessively. Don't over-explain. State your exit. Express genuine appreciation and move. Lingering undermines the whole thing. Now let's talk about follow-up. This is where most networking fails. People collect contacts and never reach out, or they send generic messages that get ignored. The connection dies before it starts. Effective follow-up has 3 elements: speed, specificity, and value. Speed means within 48 hours. After that, the memory fades. They've met dozens of other people. Your window is closing. Specificity means referencing something from your actual conversation. This proves you were paying attention. It separates you from every generic "great to meet you" message. Value means offering something, not asking for something. At least in the first follow-up. Here's the script. Hi Name, it was great meeting you at event yesterday. I enjoyed our conversation about specific topic. I came across relevant article/resource/connection and thought of you. Would love to stay in touch. That's it. Short, specific, valuable. You're not asking for a favor. You're not pitching anything. You're providing value and leaving the door open. If they respond, you've started a relationship. If they don't, you've still made a positive impression. Either way, you've done what 90% of people fail to do. You followed up with substance. Let's look at how this contrasts with the common approach. Average networkers send generic follow-ups. Hey, great to meet you. Let's grab coffee sometime. There's no specificity, no value, no reason for the other person to respond. High-connection networkers send targeted follow-ups. They reference the actual conversation. They offer something relevant. They make responding easy and appealing. The difference in response rate is dramatic. Generic messages get ignored. Specific, valuable messages get replies. Now let's shift to a different context: dating. First dates share many dynamics with networking. Two strangers. Limited time. The need to make an impression. The pressure to perform. But dating adds another layer, romantic tension. This makes many quiet people even more anxious. They overthink every word. They try to be impressive. They forget to be present. The scripts I'm about to share solve this by giving you default language for common moments. You won't need to improvise under pressure. You'll have the words ready. Let's start with opening the date. The first few minutes set the tone. You want to establish warmth and ease immediately. Here's the script. It's good to finally meet in person. You look great. How was your day getting here? 3 parts. Acknowledge the transition from texting to real life. Give a genuine compliment. Ask an easy opening question. This works because it's warm without being intense. You're not launching into deep conversation. You're letting them settle in. Now let's cover the most common date challenge. Awkward silences. Silences happen. They're not failures. But if you don't know how to navigate them, they feel like failures. Your anxiety spikes. You say something random. The randomness creates more awkwardness. Here's the reframe. Silences are only awkward if you treat them as awkward. If you stay relaxed, they become pauses. Pauses are fine. But if you want a script to bridge a silence naturally, here it is. You know what I was just thinking about? Then share an observation, a question, or a connection to something they mentioned earlier. Example. You know what I was just thinking about? You mentioned earlier that you started painting during the pandemic. Do you still make time for that? This script works because it's honest. You're sharing your actual thought process. And it often leads back to something meaningful they already said, which shows you were listening. Here's another silence bridge. Okay, I have a question for you. It might be a little random. Then ask something genuinely curious. Not a job interview question. Something that reveals personality. Examples. What's something you're looking forward to this month? If you could master any skill overnight, what would it be? What's the best trip you've ever taken? These questions work because they're interesting to answer. They invite stories. They move the conversation past surface facts. Now let's cover a situation that makes many people freeze. The moment when you want to express interest. You're enjoying the date. You want them to know, but you don't want to be too intense. You don't want to seem desperate. Here's the script for expressing interest without overdoing it. Mid-date. I'm really enjoying this. You're easy to talk to. End of date. I had a great time tonight. I'd like to do this again. Simple, direct, confident. Notice what's missing. No excessive qualifiers. No, I hope this isn't too forward, but. No, I don't usually say this, but. Those additions undermine the statement. They signal insecurity. If you're interested, say so clearly. Confidence is attractive. Hedging is not. Let's look at one more comparison. Average daters try to impress. They talk about their accomplishments. They try to seem more successful, more interesting, more desirable than they actually are. They perform a version of themselves. High-connection daters focus on genuine exchange. They share authentically. They ask real questions. They let the conversation flow naturally rather than forcing it toward impressive topics. The irony is that authenticity is more impressive than performance. People can sense when you're being real, and realness is rare. Let me give you one final script for ending a date well. If you want to see them again, I really enjoyed tonight. Let's do this again soon. I'll text you. If you're unsure, thanks for tonight. It was nice meeting you. This is warm but non-committal. It doesn't promise a second date or close the door. If you're not interested, I had a nice time. Take care. Polite, final, clear. Having these scripts ready means you won't stumble at the end. You'll close with the same confidence you opened with. So here's your social toolkit. 4 networking openers. Observation bridge, honest admission, contextual hook, simple direct, or warm referral. Pick 2 and memorize them. For exits, forward motion, honest transition, introduction bridge, or direct close. Practice until they feel natural. For follow-up, within 48 hours, specific reference, offer value. For dates, warm opening, silence bridges, direct interest statements, clean closes. These scripts don't require you to become someone else. They require you to have words ready for moments that used to make you freeze. That's the difference between anxiety and confidence. Confidence is preparation, but scripts are tactics. Tactics serve a larger strategy. The larger strategy is the 12 habits that make respect automatic. Behaviors so consistent that people take you seriously without you needing to perform. In Chapter 8, you'll learn the first 6 of these habits. Each one is specific, practicable, and backed by research. Together, they form the foundation of quiet charisma. And in Chapter 9, you'll learn habits 7 through 12, including one that will surprise you because it contradicts almost everything you've been told about how to earn respect. Chapter 8 starts now. Chapter 8, The 12 Charismatic Habits, Part 1, Habits 1 to 6. Researchers tracked 500 high-respect professionals for 5 years. These 6 habits appeared in 94% of them. Not talent, not luck, not connections. Habits. Small, repeatable behaviors that compound over time into something that looks like natural charisma. The kind of presence that makes people listen when you speak, remember you after you leave, and take you seriously before you've proven anything. This chapter gives you the first 6 habits. Chapter 9 gives you the remaining 6. Together, they form the complete behavioral foundation of quiet charisma. Each habit is specific, each habit is practicable, and each habit can be installed through deliberate repetition until it becomes automatic. Let's begin. Habit 1. Silence before response. When someone asks you a question, what do you do? If you're like most people, you start talking immediately. The question ends, your answer begins. No gap, no pause. Instant reaction. This is a low-status signal. It communicates that you're eager to please, that you're afraid silence will be interpreted as incompetence, that you're performing responsiveness rather than actually thinking. High-respect professionals do something different. They pause. Not a long pause, not an awkward delay, just 1 to 2 seconds of silence before they respond. A brief moment where they appear to consider the question before answering. This tiny pause changes everything. A 2015 study by Columbia Business School professor Adam Galinsky, published in Psychological Science, found that speakers who paused for an average of 2 seconds before responding were rated as 40% more thoughtful and 23% more competent than immediate responders, even when their actual answers were identical. The pause signals that your response is considered, not reactive, that you're thinking, not performing, that your words are worth waiting for. Here's the practice. For 1 week, count to 2 in your head before answering any question at all. In meetings, in conversations, in casual exchanges. Just 2 seconds. It will feel strange at first. You'll feel the urge to fill the silence. Resist. Let the pause happen. Within a week, it becomes natural, and people will start treating your words differently. Habit 2. Clean sentences. Listen to how most people speak. Their sentences trail off. They add qualifiers. They use filler words. They circle around their point before landing on it, if they land on it at all. So, I was thinking, maybe, like, we could possibly, consider looking at the data, if that makes sense. This is verbal clutter. It buries your point under noise. It signals uncertainty, even when you're certain. It makes people work to understand you. High-respect professionals speak in clean sentences. Subject, verb, object. Point made. Full stop. We should review the data before deciding. Same idea. Fraction of the words. 10 times the impact. Clean sentences are not about being cold or robotic. They're about respecting your own thoughts enough to deliver them clearly. They're about trusting that your point can stand without being propped up by qualifiers. Here's the practice. Record yourself in a meeting or conversation. Listen back. Count the filler words. Count the trailing sentences. Count the qualifiers that add no meaning. Then practice trimming. Take a point you want to make and reduce it to 1 clean sentence. Practice saying it out loud. Get comfortable with the brevity. Most people are afraid of short sentences. They think more words sound smarter. The opposite is true. Brevity signals confidence. Clutter signals doubt. Habit 3. Earned eye contact. You learned about eye contact in Chapter 2. But there's a layer we didn't cover, the concept of earned eye contact. Most people give eye contact freely. They look at everyone equally. They make eye contact to be polite, to show they're listening, to avoid seeming rude. High-respect professionals treat eye contact as a resource. They give it deliberately. They hold it when making a point. They soften it when listening. They withdraw it when someone is speaking too long or dominating inappropriately. This is earned eye contact. You give it to reward behavior you want to encourage. You withdraw it to signal when behavior has missed the mark. This sounds manipulative. It's not. It's how all high-status individuals naturally behave. Watch any respected leader in a meeting. They don't give equal attention to everyone. They give attention based on who is contributing value. When you treat your attention as valuable, others treat it as valuable too. They work to earn it. They notice when they have it. And they respect you more because your attention means something. Here's the practice. In your next meeting, notice where your eye contact goes. Are you giving it away freely? Are you looking at people who are rambling just as much as people who are contributing? Start being more selective. Give steady eye contact to people making strong points. Let your gaze drift when someone is wasting time. You're not being rude. You're being honest about where value is coming from. Habit 4. Strategic stillness. Anxious people move constantly. They shift in their seats. They fidget with pens. They touch their face, their hair, their clothes. They tap their feet. They adjust their position. These movements are not random. They're the body's attempt to discharge nervous energy. And everyone around you can see them. High-respect professionals are still, not frozen, not rigid, just settled. They sit in one position without constant adjustment. They gesture when speaking, then return to stillness. They move with intention, not anxiety. This stillness reads as confidence. It reads as comfort. It reads as someone who doesn't need external movement to regulate internal state. Strategic stillness is the physical expression of the nervous energy off protocol from Chapter 3. When your nervous system is regulated, stillness happens naturally. When it's dysregulated, movement leaks out. Here's the practice. In your next meeting, plant yourself. Choose your position and stay in it. When you feel the urge to adjust, fidget, or shift, don't. Just notice the urge and let it pass. This will feel uncomfortable at first. The urge to move is strong, but every time you resist, you're training your body to tolerate stillness. Over time, stillness becomes your default. And when stillness is your default, every movement you make carries more weight. A single gesture stands out because it's surrounded by calm. Habit 5. Value first listening. Most people listen to respond. While the other person talks, they're preparing their reply. They're waiting for an opening. They're thinking about what they want to say. This is half listening, and the other person can feel it. High-respect professionals listen to understand. Their focus is on extracting value from what the other person is saying. Their reply comes second. Comprehension comes first. This is value-first listening. You enter every conversation asking, what is valuable here? What can I learn? What does this person know that I don't? This reframe changes how you listen. You're no longer waiting for your turn. You're mining for insight. And that shift is visible in your body language, your follow-up questions, and your responses. Value-first listeners are rare. Most people are too focused on themselves to truly absorb what others are saying. When you become the exception, when you listen with genuine curiosity, people notice. They feel heard. They trust you. They respect you. There's a story from Google's early days that circulates in leadership circles. A young engineer named Ben, not his real name, was known for something unusual. In meetings full of brilliant, vocal engineers competing to have their ideas heard, Ben rarely spoke first. Often, he didn't speak at all until the end. But when he did speak, the room stopped. His manager noticed a pattern. Ben would listen intently while others debated. He'd take notes. He'd ask occasional clarifying questions, never to challenge, always to understand. Then, when the energy had exhausted itself, he would synthesize. It sounds like we're trying to solve 3 different problems, he might say. Here's how I see them connecting. And suddenly, the chaos had structure. The competing ideas had a framework. The path forward was clear. Ben was promoted 3 times in 4 years. Not because he was the loudest voice or the most frequent contributor, because he was the one who made everyone else's contributions make sense. His manager later described it this way. Ben didn't fight for airtime. He made airtime worth something. When he spoke, it was because he had something that the room actually needed. That's rare. That's valuable. That's why he's leading a team now. Value-first listening isn't passive. It's strategic. You're not withdrawing from the conversation. You're mining it for the insight that will make your contribution count. Here's the practice. In your next conversation, set an internal goal. Find one thing this person knows that you don't. One insight, one perspective, one piece of information. This goal forces you to listen differently. You're not evaluating. You're excavating. You're looking for the value that's there. After the conversation, know what you learned. If you can't name anything, you weren't truly listening. Let me give you a comparison here. Average professionals listen to respond. They're thinking about their next point while the other person is still talking. They interrupt with "that reminds me of," or "in my experience." They treat conversation as a platform for their own ideas. High-respect professionals listen to extract. They're fully present with the speaker. They ask follow-up questions that probe deeper. They synthesize what they've heard before adding their own perspective. The difference is visible. The listener who extracts makes the speaker feel valued. The listener who waits makes the speaker feel tolerated. Habit 6. Boundary rituals. In Chapter 4, you learn the language of boundaries. But language is only half the equation. The other half is consistency. A boundary stated once is a suggestion. A boundary stated repeatedly becomes a ritual, a known rule that others learn to respect automatically. High-respect professionals have boundary rituals. Regular, predictable behaviors that signal their limits without requiring negotiation every time. Examples of boundary rituals. Ending meetings on time. Every time. We're at time. Let's pick this up next session. People learn that your meetings end when scheduled. They stop expecting you to run over. Not responding to email after a certain hour. Every time. People learn that evening emails get answered in the morning. They adjust their expectations. Blocking focus time on your calendar. Every time. People learn that certain hours are unavailable. They stop requesting meetings during those windows. Starting work at a consistent time. Leaving at a consistent time. Taking lunch away from your desk. These rituals train your environment to respect your structure. The key is consistency. If you sometimes enforce the boundary and sometimes don't, people learn that your boundaries are negotiable. They push. They test. But if you always enforce the boundary, calmly, without drama, people learn that the boundary is real. They stop pushing. The ritual becomes invisible because everyone has internalized it. Here's the practice. Choose one boundary that matters to you. Email cutoff time. Meeting endings. Focus blocks. Whatever is most important for your productivity and sanity. Then enforce it without exception for 30 days. No flexibility. No special cases. Just consistent enforcement. By day 30, the people around you will have adapted. The boundary will be established, and you'll have created a ritual that protects your capacity without requiring constant vigilance. Here's one more comparison to close this chapter. Average professionals set boundaries reactively. They wait until they're overwhelmed, then push back in frustration. Their boundaries feel inconsistent because they only appear under stress. High-respect professionals set boundaries proactively. They establish rituals before they're overwhelmed. Their boundaries feel natural because they're consistent regardless of stress level. The difference is not willpower. The difference is systems. Rituals are systems that make boundaries automatic. So here's where you stand. 6 habits. 6 behaviors that separate high-respect professionals from everyone else. Silence before response. Let the pause make your words count. Clean sentences. Say what you mean without the clutter. Earned eye contact. Give your attention to those who earn it. Strategic stillness. Let your calm presence speak. Value-first listening. Extract before you contribute. Boundary rituals. Train your environment through consistency. Practice one habit at a time. Spend a week on each. By the end of 6 weeks, these behaviors will be integrated into how you operate. But we're only halfway through. Habits 7 through 12 are where things get interesting. Habit 7, in particular, will challenge something you've been taught your entire career. You've been told it's essential for success. Research shows it might be holding you back. In Chapter 9, you'll learn the remaining 6 habits, including the one that contradicts conventional wisdom about how respect is earned. Chapter 9 starts now. Chapter 9, The 12 Charismatic Habits, Part 2, Habits 7 to 12. Habit 7 will surprise you. The highest respect professionals do less of something you've been told to do more. For years, you've heard the same advice. Be open. Share more. Let people in. Vulnerability builds connection. Authenticity means showing everything. This advice is incomplete, and for quiet professionals, it's often counterproductive. The research tells a different story. A study from the University of Texas found that selective disclosure, sharing strategically rather than freely, creates stronger impressions of competence and trustworthiness than open disclosure. People who shared less, but shared meaningfully, were rated as more authoritative and more respected. This is habit 7, selective sharing. High-respect professionals don't share everything. They curate. They choose what to reveal and what to hold back. They understand that mystery creates interest and restraint signals confidence. This doesn't mean being secretive or cold. It means being intentional. Here's what selective sharing looks like in practice. When someone asks about your weekend, you don't give a minute-by-minute recap. You share one interesting detail and stop. When someone asks about your career history, you don't recite your resume. You mention one relevant experience and let them ask for more. When someone asks your opinion, you state it clearly without over-explaining your reasoning unless they request it. The principle is simple. Leave people wanting more rather than wishing you'd said less. Average professionals overshare. They mistake quantity for connection. They believe that the more they reveal, the closer people will feel. Instead, they exhaust their audience and dilute their impact. High-respect professionals undershare strategically. They give enough to be engaging, then stop. They let silence create curiosity. They understand that the less you say, the more each word carries weight. Here's the practice. For 1 week, aim to say 20% less than you normally would. In every conversation, notice when you're about to over-explain and stop. Make your point and let it land. Trust that people will ask if they want more. This feels uncomfortable at first. You'll worry that you're being withholding. You're not. You're being respectful of people's time and attention. You're being confident that your core message is enough. Habit 8. Calm disagreement. In Chapter 6, you learn scripts for disagreeing in meetings. Habit 8 goes deeper. It's not just about what you say when you disagree. It's about how you hold yourself. Most people experience disagreement as conflict. Their body tenses. Their voice tightens. Their energy shifts toward defense or attack. Even when their words are reasonable, their physiology broadcasts aggression or anxiety. High-respect professionals disagree from calm. Their body stays relaxed. Their voice stays steady. Their pace stays controlled. They deliver the disagreement as information, not as combat. This calm changes how the disagreement lands. When you disagree without tension, others hear your point rather than reacting to your energy. They consider your perspective rather than defending against your attack. Calm disagreement is the ultimate power move. It says, I'm confident enough in my position that I don't need to fight for it. I can simply state it. Here's the practice. Before you disagree with anyone, in a meeting, in a conversation, in an email, take one breath. Run the micro reset from Chapter 3. Drop your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Then deliver your disagreement from that regulated state. The breath is the key. It interrupts the reactive pattern. It gives you a moment to choose calm instead of defaulting to tension. Over time, calm becomes your default mode for disagreement. And when you can disagree without escalating, people respect both your position and your composure. Habit 9. Grounded presence. There's a quality that some people have that's hard to name. When they enter a room, something shifts. When they speak, people listen. When they're silent, their silence has weight. This quality is presence, and it's more learnable than people think. Presence is not about charisma in the theatrical sense. It's not about being the center of attention. It's about being fully where you are. Most people are not fully present. Their mind is in the past or the future. They're thinking about what happened earlier or what's coming next. They're physically in the room, but mentally elsewhere. High-respect professionals are grounded in the current moment. Their attention is here. Their energy is here. They're not leaking into worry or distraction. This groundedness is visible. It shows in steady eye contact. It shows in unhurried movement. It shows in responses that actually address what was just said rather than pivoting to a prepared point. Here's the practice. Before entering any important space, a meeting room, a stage, a networking event, pause at the threshold. Feel your feet on the ground. Take one breath. Arrive mentally before you arrive physically. This ritual takes 5 seconds, but it shifts your energy from scattered to centered. And that centered energy is what people experience as presence. Most people rush through transitions. They're still processing the last thing while entering the next thing. High-respect professionals create a clean break. They close one chapter before opening the next. They arrive fully. Habit 10, outcome detachment. This habit is psychological rather than behavioral, but it shapes every behavior that follows. Most people enter important situations attached to specific outcomes. They need the meeting to go well. They need the person to like them. They need the presentation to be perfect. This attachment creates pressure. Pressure creates tension. Tension leaks through body language, voice, and word choice. The need to succeed becomes visible, and that visibility undermines success. High-respect professionals practice outcome detachment. They prepare fully, then release the outcome. They do their best work without clinging to results. They focus on execution, not on evaluation. This detachment is not apathy. It's not giving up on goals. It's recognizing that you control your actions, but not other people's responses. You control your preparation, but not external circumstances. Attaching your emotional state to things you can't control is a recipe for anxiety. Here's the mindset shift. Before any high-stakes situation, tell yourself, I will do my best. The outcome is not in my control. Then focus entirely on the doing. This shift is liberating. When you're not managing anxiety about results, you have more capacity for performance. When you're not scanning for approval, you're more present. When you're not attached, you're more powerful. Let me give you a comparison. Average professionals enter important situations needing validation. They're watching for signs that it's going well. They adjust their behavior based on reactions. They're reactive rather than grounded. High-respect professionals enter important situations offering value. They're focused on delivering, not on being received. They trust that good execution leads to good outcomes, but they don't require the outcome to feel good about the execution. This is quiet confidence. It's not arrogance. It's not certainty that you'll succeed. It's peace with the possibility that you might not, and commitment to doing your best anyway. Attachment to outcome is the enemy of performance. Prepare like it matters, then perform like it doesn't. Habit 11, standard protection. Everyone has standards. Few people protect them. Standards are the quality thresholds you hold for yourself and others. How thoroughly you prepare, how carefully you communicate, how reliably you follow through, how you expect to be treated. Most people have high standards in theory, but when pressure comes, they compromise. They cut corners to meet deadlines. They accept disrespect to avoid conflict. They lower their bar because someone else asked them to. High-respect professionals protect their standards. Not rigidly, not inflexibly, but consistently. They know what they stand for, and they don't abandon it under pressure. This protection is visible. When you refuse to submit work that isn't ready, people notice. When you decline to be treated poorly, even by superiors, people notice. When you hold your line while others cave, people notice. Standard protection is uncomfortable in the short term. Saying, "This needs more time," when everyone wants it now creates friction. Saying, "That's not acceptable," when others stay silent creates tension. But in the long term, standard protection creates respect. People learn that you can be trusted, that your yes means something, that your name on something guarantees quality. Here's the practice. Identify one standard that matters to you, one threshold of quality or treatment that you believe in. Then commit to protecting it for 30 days, regardless of pressure. This might mean missing a deadline to ensure quality. This might mean having a difficult conversation about how you're being treated. This might mean saying no when everyone else says yes. Each time you protect the standard, it becomes easier. The habit strengthens, and your reputation becomes someone who cannot be pressured into mediocrity. Habit 12, authority pacing. This final habit ties everything together. Pacing is how you regulate the speed of your actions and speech. Most people pace reactively. When the environment speeds up, they speed up. When others rush, they rush. They match the tempo around them. High-respect professionals pace intentionally. They set their own speed regardless of environmental pressure. They speak at their chosen tempo. They move at their chosen tempo. They respond at their chosen tempo. This is authority pacing. It signals that you're not controlled by external circumstances, that you have an internal rhythm that doesn't bend to every external demand. Authority pacing applies to speech. When others speak quickly, you maintain your steady rhythm. You don't race to match them. You don't feel pressured to accelerate. Authority pacing applies to movement. When others are rushing around frantically, you move with deliberate calm. Your tempo is your own. Authority pacing applies to decisions. When others want answers immediately, you take the time you need. "Let me think about that and get back to you" is an authority pacing statement. You're not reactive. You're responsive on your timeline. Here's the practice. Choose one context: meetings, presentations, conversations, and deliberately slow your pace by 10 to 15%. Speak slightly slower. Move slightly more deliberately. Pause slightly longer before responding. Notice how this changes the dynamic. When you're not matching everyone else's rushed energy, you stand out. Your calm becomes a reference point. Others often slow down to match you. This is the essence of quiet charisma. You're not fighting for attention. You're not performing. You're operating at your own frequency, and that frequency is calm, deliberate, and grounded. Let me give you one final comparison. Average professionals are paced by their environment. Their speed, their energy, their urgency are determined by what's happening around them. They're reactive. They're pulled by external forces. High-respect professionals pace their environment. Their speed, their energy, their urgency are internally determined. They're proactive. They create the tempo rather than following it. When you control your pacing, you signal that you control yourself. And self-control is the foundation of all respect. So here are your 12 habits. Habits 1 through 6, silence before response. Clean sentences. Earned eye contact. Strategic stillness. Value first listening. Boundary rituals. Habits 7 through 12, selective sharing. Calm disagreement. Grounded presence. Outcome detachment. Standard protection. Authority pacing. These 12 behaviors, practiced consistently, create the impression of natural charisma. People won't analyze why they respect you. They'll just know that they do. But there's one more element to address. Every habit has an anti-version, a shadow behavior that looks similar but produces the opposite result, a mistake that undermines respect instead of building it. In the final chapter, you'll learn the 12 anti-habits, the respect-destroying patterns that most people don't know they're doing. You'll also get a 30-day implementation plan that installs these habits systematically. You're about to complete the system. Chapter 10 starts now. Chapter 10, the 12 anti-habits plus your 30-day protocol. Everything you've learned can be destroyed by one habit. Here are the 12 respect killers most people don't know they're doing. You now have the complete system, the frameworks, the scripts, the 12 habits. You understand what high-respect professionals do differently. But knowing what to do is only half the equation. The other half is knowing what to stop doing. Every charismatic habit has an anti-version, a shadow behavior that feels similar but produces the opposite result. These anti-habits are sneaky. You don't notice yourself doing them. They're invisible to you, but visible to everyone else. This chapter exposes all 12. By the end, you'll recognize patterns you've been running for years, and you'll have a 30-day protocol to replace them. Let's begin. Anti-habit 1, hedge words. The habit is clean sentences. The anti-habit is burying those sentences under qualifiers. Hedge words are the verbal cushions people use to soften their statements. Just, maybe, kind of, sort of, I think, I feel like. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? These words feel polite. They feel humble. They feel safe. They destroy respect. When you say, "I just wanted to check in," you've minimized your own action. When you say, "Maybe we could possibly consider," you've signaled that even you aren't sure of your point. When you end with, "Does that make sense?" you've handed your credibility to your listener for judgment. High-respect professionals state their points directly. "I wanted to check in. We should consider this." Period. No hedge. No apology for having a thought. The fix: record yourself for one day. Count the hedge words. The number will shock you. Then practice eliminating one hedge word per week until clean sentences are your default. Anti-habit 2. Nervous laughter. The habit is calm presence. The anti-habit is laughing when nothing is funny. Nervous laughter is a release valve for discomfort. Something awkward happens, you laugh. Someone says something that isn't a joke, you laugh. You make a point, then laugh to soften it. This laughter signals anxiety. It tells everyone that you're uncomfortable. It undermines whatever you just said. Watch high-respect professionals. They rarely laugh nervously. When they laugh, something is actually funny. Their laughter is earned, not reflexive. The fix: notice when you laugh. Ask yourself, was that actually funny? If not, you've identified a nervous laugh. Practice letting awkward moments exist without filling them with laughter. Silence is more powerful than nervous noise. Anti-habit 3. Over-apologizing. The habit is boundary setting. The anti-habit is apologizing for having boundaries. I'm so sorry, but I can't make that meeting. I apologize, but I need to leave on time today. Sorry to bother you, but I have a question. Each apology signals that you're doing something wrong, but you're not. Having limits is not an offense. Asking a question is not a crime. Leaving on time is not a betrayal. When you apologize for normal behavior, you train people to expect apologies. You frame your boundaries as problems. You undermine your own legitimacy. The fix: replace sorry with thank you. Instead of sorry for the delay, say thank you for your patience. Instead of sorry to bother you, say thank you for your time. This reframe maintains politeness without self-deprecation. Anti-habit 4. Approval seeking. The habit is outcome detachment. The anti-habit is scanning for validation after everything you say. Approval seeking is visible. It's the quick glance around the room after you make a point. It's the rising intonation that turns statements into questions. It's the pause where you wait for someone to confirm that you did well. This seeking broadcasts insecurity. It says, I don't trust my own contribution. I need you to tell me it was okay. High-respect professionals deliver their point and let it stand. They don't scan for approval. They don't convert statements into questions. They trust that their contribution has value, and if it doesn't, they'll learn through feedback, not through anxious monitoring. The fix: after you speak in a meeting, resist the urge to look around for reactions. Keep your eyes steady. Let your point land. Trust that you don't need immediate validation to know your contribution mattered. Anti-habit 5. Reactive pacing. The habit is authority pacing. The anti-habit is matching everyone else's speed. When the room is frantic, you become frantic. When someone speaks fast, you speed up. When there's urgency, you absorb it and amplify it. This reactive pacing signals that you're controlled by your environment, that you have no internal rhythm, that your state is determined by external circumstances. High-respect professionals maintain their tempo. They're the calm in the storm. Their pacing is a choice, not a reaction. The fix: in your next high-pressure situation, deliberately slow down by 15%. Speak slower. Move slower. Respond after a pause. Notice how this changes the dynamic. Often, others slow down to match you. Anti-habit 6. Compulsive filling. The habit is strategic silence. The anti-habit is filling every pause with noise. Silence makes most people uncomfortable, so they fill it with filler words, with unnecessary elaboration, with sounds that mean nothing, like, you know. This filling signals discomfort with space. It signals that you don't trust silence to carry meaning. It clutters your communication and dilutes your impact. High-respect professionals let silence exist. They pause between thoughts. They let points land before moving to the next one. Their silence communicates as much as their speech. The fix: practice pausing. In your next conversation, insert a 2-second pause after each complete thought. Notice the urge to fill it. Resist. Let the silence exist. Over time, silence becomes comfortable and powerful. Let me give you a comparison here. Average professionals fill silence because it feels awkward. They interpret pauses as failures. They believe that more words mean more value. High-respect professionals use silence because it creates weight. They interpret pauses as punctuation. They believe that fewer words, delivered with space, mean more impact. The difference is comfort with emptiness. When you can hold space without filling it, you signal a level of confidence that most people never reach. Anti-habit 7. Boundary collapse. The habit is boundary protection. The anti-habit is setting boundaries and then abandoning them under pressure. You say you can't take on more work. Someone pushes. You fold. You say you're leaving at 6. Something urgent appears. You stay. You set a limit, then you cross it yourself. This collapse is worse than never setting the boundary at all. It trains people that your limits are negotiable. It teaches them to push because pushing works. It destroys your credibility for future boundaries. The fix: when you set a boundary, treat it as non-negotiable for at least the first few instances. Hold the line even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Each time you hold, the boundary strengthens. Each time you collapse, it weakens. Write this down. A boundary without enforcement is just a suggestion. Anti-habit 8. Premature disclosure. The habit is selective sharing. The anti-habit is sharing too much too soon. You meet someone new and tell them your life story. You're in a meeting and over-explain your reasoning. You're on a date and reveal your deepest insecurities in the first hour. Premature disclosure feels like connection. It feels like authenticity. It feels like you're building trust by being open. It actually overwhelms people. It violates social pacing. It gives away your mystery before you've established your value. The fix: match disclosure to relationship depth. With new acquaintances, share surface-level information. As trust builds, share more. Let the relationship earn your deeper stories rather than giving them away for free. Anti-habit 9. Attention scattering. The habit is grounded presence. The anti-habit is being physically present but mentally elsewhere. You're in a conversation but thinking about your next meeting. You're in a meeting but checking your phone under the table. You're with someone but your eyes keep drifting to movement behind them. This scattering is visible. People can tell when you're not fully there. And partial attention feels worse than no attention at all. The fix: when you're with someone, be with them completely. Put away devices. Stop scanning the environment. Give them your full focus, even if only for a few minutes. Complete presence for a short time beats partial presence for a long time. Anti-habit 10. Emotional reactivity. The habit is calm disagreement. The anti-habit is letting emotions hijack your responses. Someone criticizes your work and you get defensive. Someone disagrees with you and you get frustrated. Someone challenges you and you feel attacked. These reactions are visible. Your body tenses. Your voice changes. Your words become sharper. Even when you're technically right, the reactivity undermines your message. The fix: when you feel an emotional reaction rising, pause. Take one breath. Let the spike pass before you respond. You can still address the issue, but from regulation, not from reactivity. Anti-habit 11. Chronic self-deprecation. The habit is quiet confidence. The anti-habit is constantly diminishing yourself. Oh, it was nothing. I just got lucky. I'm not really an expert. Anyone could have done that. Self-deprecation feels humble. It feels safe. It preempts criticism by criticizing yourself first. But it teaches people to devalue you. If you say your work was nothing, they believe you. If you say you're not an expert, they treat you like one who isn't. Your words shape their perception. The fix: accept compliments simply. Thank you. That's enough. No dismissal. No deflection. Just acknowledgement. Let your work speak for itself without you talking it down. Anti-habit 12. Consistency failure. The habit is all 12 habits. The anti-habit is practicing them sometimes, but not always. You're calm and grounded in important meetings, but anxious and scattered in casual ones. You hold boundaries with peers, but collapse with superiors. You practice clean sentences in presentations, but ramble in conversations. This inconsistency confuses people. They don't know which version of you to expect. And respect is built on predictability. The fix: practice the habits in low-stakes situations so they're automatic in high-stakes ones. The goal is consistency across contexts. When you're the same person in every room, people trust who you are. Now let's talk implementation. You have 12 habits to build and 12 anti-habits to eliminate. That's too much to tackle at once. You need a system. Here's your 30-day protocol. Week 1. Pause before you answer, then cut the hedge words. Week 2. Practice strategic stillness. Replace nervous laughter with a calm breath. Week 3. Set one clear boundary and hold it, no exceptions. Week 4. Review all 12 habits and drill the ones you avoid. After 30 days, you won't be perfect, you'll be started. And started is power. Remember, charisma is signal, not volume. The loudest person demands attention. The stillest person commands it. Starting now.